Jen Rzasa from Art Change of Art, and today I'm thrilled to be a guest with Simon Says Stamp. I'll be making a card that features a freehand watercolor technique, and I promise you it's going to be so easy, mostly because it doesn't have to be perfect. When it comes to watercolor, I think things look the best when they're not perfect at all. If you've been meaning to give this trend a try, I know you can do it, so let's get started. So there are a few things I did to prepare to make this card. The first thing I did was cut a piece of Bristol to be the size of an A2 size card base, so it is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and this Bristol is 140 pound and it is smooth. I also went ahead and took this linear embossing folder. This is from Lifestyle Crafts. It has a really cool triangle pattern, and I embossed that into the surface of the front of the card. So see if you can see right there. So it has really nice texture now. And the next thing I need to work on is the front panel of the card. So one more thing I did, I have a piece of Bristol that's cut just smaller. I wanted the sides to go exactly to the ends of the card base, but I wanted it to be a little bit shorter on the top and the bottom. Now I have my watercolor paints out here, and I use the Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolors, which Simon Says Stamp has just started carrying. I really highly recommend them. They are awesome, and they have some really fantastic colors. And I have my palette here, and you'll see there are a lot of colors here already. If you haven't worked with watercolor, it's really cool that they can get reactivated when you add more water. So these are just left over here from old projects, and I'm going to be dipping into colors that I already have, so I don't have to take more from the tube. Every tube of watercolor paint lasts for an extremely long time. I don't usually replace colors because, you know, they just have so much pigment in them and you could really stretch them. So the other thing I have here is a wide brush, a cup of water, and then off to the side I also have some paper towel. So I'm going to go into the water and go straight over to this really pretty tealish blue color. And I'm actually going to take my paper towel and lay it down. I want to protect my work surface a little bit. Watercolor cleans up very easily, but you know, might as well cover it up when you have a chance. Okay, so now that I have a lot of water, I'm going to load up the brush with color. And starting approximately in the center, I'm just going to make a wide stripe straight across. You know, you could always go in with a pencil and sketch this out beforehand, but what I think looks so great about watercolor is when things are a little bit imperfect. And you'll see that as this dries, I'm going to get some really lovely variations in the color. And I'm just going back in with some of the darker blue and, you know, blending it in with everything else that's there, so I have a little bit more of that color variation. Okay, now I'm going to make my second stripe right here. And the same thing, just pull across. If you notice that your color is starting to fade, you can just go back, pick up some more paint, and go right over it. Okay, and now just like before, I'll put some darker color in. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish the other stripes, doing the same exact thing. Now I'm going to allow this to dry while I work on my sentiment. I have a strip here left over from when I cut my Bristol. The papers that I use in the pad are 9 by 12. So when I cut out my card base and my front panels, I always have some of these little scraps, and they are perfect for stamping sentiments. I'll be using some Versamark ink to stamp this sentiment from Simon Says Stamp. This is the Banner Sayings set, and I'll be using the Yay, It's Your Birthday sentiment. I love that one. Now before I go ahead and emboss, I don't have one of those embossing buddies or, you know, one of those little tools that puts down the powder, but what I do have off to the side is just a little container of cornstarch, and I apply it to my paper with a brush And this will help prevent the static from getting the little bits of embossing powder to stick in places that I don't want. Okay, so I'll just ink this up with the Versamark ink. Versamark is just a sticky ink that will allow the embossing powder to adhere to the surface of the paper. Okay, now just give me a second, I'll go ahead and emboss this. So I know you can't see it because it is white on white, but the embossing powder I used is from Stampendous. This is their detail white embossing powder. And what I'm going to do to make it so that you can see the sentiment is I'll be going back in with an emboss resist technique using my watercolor. So I have a smaller brush now, and again I'm dipping into the water that I have off to the side here. And I'm going to grab some of this fuchsia color. I'm not sure if you can see that. There we go. And when I paint over, it's going to reveal the sentiment. Okay, now as I let that dry, this one is perfectly dry, and I'm going to be cutting out a hole with this die from my favorite things. This is from Circle Stacks 1. And I have a little piece of painter's tape. Let me just move this out of the way. We won't be needing the paint anymore. And I'll use the painter's tape to temporarily adhere the die to the surface of the paper. Perfect. That looks good. And now I'll just go ahead and die cut. And this I'll save for future use on another project. I always store my dies in these little containers here. Not containers, these little sleeves. And I keep it all together so that the next time I need a circle, I can use that. Now I'll grab my card base, and I'm going to adhere this front panel to the card with some foam tape. Okay, now whenever I adhere a panel to a card with tape like this, I don't want to remove all of the pieces of tape, because if I don't have good placement, it'll be really difficult to lift up and put back down. So just having a few of them kind of gives me a little more wiggle room and allows me to play around with the placement more. Okay, now that I have it where I like it, I can smush those down and then remove the rest of the backing. Now my sentiment is going to go right about here, and I think I want to cut some little banner ends. So I'll just use these tiny detail scissors, cut a slit down the center, and then go from the corners right up to that point. So I get a nice little banner end. I'll do the same thing on this side, trying to cut just about the same amount. Now I want this card to have lots of dimensions, so this is going to get 2 layers of the foam tape here where the card base is, and then 1 layer on the side, so that way it's popped up a little bit more than the rest of the card. Okay, now the final step is to stamp out some stars to add as accents along the inner edge of this circle. And I have some cute little star fake veneer from the new Altenew set called Faux Veneer. And this has a lot of little tiny accents that you can just put on your cards or on your scrapbook layouts. And I'll be stamping these with Memento ink in bamboo leaves. I'm using that same scrap of Bristol that I was using before. So I'll ink these guys up. I'm not sure yet how many I want, so I'll stamp this out twice. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and once again use those fine detail scissors. These are the cutter bees, and I'll cut around each one of the stars. When I was cutting out the stars, I made sure to leave a little bit of a border, just a white border around each one, and then I adhered them down to the card with more of that foam tape. So I really hope you enjoyed this project, and I also hope that you have a great day. Bye.